per presentation, and then we'll move around the board and then have an open discussion. Would you like to share your Moreau board, or do you want everyone just to zoom in, or would you like me to share it? What format works best for you?
Yeah, if everyone can just zoom into the Miro board, because we don't have it open on this computer right now.
I could try sharing too, just to make this more focused. You guys see that okay? Yes? Okay, great. Okay. All right, Zhu Cheng.
Okay. Hi, I'm Zhu Cheng, and this is Lindsay. And our thesis begins in computational space, and we rethink how a design typically would come about, and in a specific terms, how we understand materials in digital. The way that we've reconsidered this is that we presume that we need some digital material before we need a shape, or at least we need them at the same time. Rather than thinking that we first put a shape down and then we cover it with a texture map, this thesis has produced a series of novel computational materials. Those materials transform their state, as you can see here, by manipulating the diodes. Tuning them, we can create a series of different material properties and effects, and know that they are three-dimensional. The intention is that they have thickness, and that we've broken them down into what we call super chunks, or like an elephant, or a micro chunk like a turtle. And that those are available to us singly, individually, or in a collective material choosing interface.
And then we take the second step. We inverted a kind of conventional process that we apply shape. And we do that in several ways, through modes, through Boolean operations, and so forth. And this inversion, and at the same time, that the kind of transforming state of materials has now opened up for us a whole another way of thinking about computational kind of digital foundry, and another way of thinking about compositions that doesn't start with first with shape.
And for miniature, we are working on a 3D foundry. This will extend the idea from our work of our spring vertical ordered oneness box. So as you can see here, a lot of objects have their own motion and movement individually, but they were collectively put into the container, the box. And in our thesis case, the box will be like a virtual boundary where the object will be our house assets combined with the material. So they will keep moving in a virtual container, and when we stop it, the house project is there. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I did try to show your videos, but they were not playing, but hopefully the links will work to go to Vimeo if anyone wants to check them out. Are there any immediate questions for Zhu Cheng or Lindsay, or should we continue?
You guys, you can put the links if you want of the Vimeos on the chat if somebody wants to see them.
Okay, we will.
While yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, then we'll continue on with Nero. Nero, did you share, or do you want me to zoom in? How would that?
It's okay. You can just zoom in. I don't have like a specific image to talk about. It's almost like every single of lines kind of stuff.
All right.
Okay. Shall I start?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Nero He, and my thesis name is Zoo, which is a collection of assets and holds shape of a mountain. A mountain is a combination of geological matters pressing onto each other with some fashion, which is inclusive, changing over time by environment and climate, becoming a formless information overlay. The change of view affects the shape of a mountain, revealing different contextual information. In the mountain, outside of the mountain, zoom in, zoom out, no two views are alike. One can now tell the true shape of a mountain because he himself is in the mountain. So I was picturing to create a magnificent mountain model where the architectural mountainscape can be constructed physically. However, I know it sounds cliche, but Corona hit me hard. It was a dark space thinking about the whole idea of interacting with physical model with digital presentation is falling apart. So recently, I think I finally make peace with myself. It is the urge of seeking for physical construction format makes me start to explore a new way of working with digital tools, but with limitation and physical constraint. So here I want to share this Nero's Goodwill Zoo set Dropbox on the very top. It says donate now to all of you guys. I'm calling out for digital assets like models and shaders, and I will construct this zoo mountain with those assets, which will be reviewed over time. I'm also proposing to stream my work process where people can make comments and see assets are adding to the pile daily. It is a accumulation project. Time is a factor of the collection where sources are sampled, recycled, upcycled, last but not least, curated in unstable manners. Hope I could find a new energy out of this digital physical synthesis exchange. Thank you.
Devin, you're muted.
No. I thought there was something going on with my headphone.
Sadvi, I just wanted to know, did you want me to zoom in for you or do you want to share your screen? Where is she?
I'm fine with either.
Okay. All right. Just go for it. And then if you want me to do anything specific, just give me the word.
All right. Maybe if you can play the videos, that would be great. Thank you. The occurrence of a double is of more value than a standalone building. It substantiates their existence by discerning self-identity. They are a manifestation of the inherent duality present in every being. While the identicality of repetition provokes a certain disorientation, their stature as twin buildings is a commentary on a persisting double consciousness. The riddle of duality can be contemplated as at a national, political, and social scale. The thesis reveals and declares the Vatican's treasures with an architectural gesture by looking at the relationship between twin buildings. One of the buildings is situated in extraterritorial land, a property of Rome, but governed by the Vatican, and the other building on an official Roman territory. The sites chosen are oxymoronic, bearing political, cultural, and semiotic baggage. Taking inspiration from Thomas Friedman's conceptual sculptures, I have carried out the process of replication by crumpling two pieces of paper together and then separating them so that they endure similar physical forces, making them identical.
Okay, are there any questions for Sadvi? All right, we'll continue on. Hi, Sam. Do you want me to share or would you like to share?
We could just keep your screen sharing. If you could just play some of these AR guys.
Here we go.
Okay. The thesis imagines ceramics as the interstitial medium between the private and the communal surface. On the one hand, we have the scale of the individual, essentially the ergonomic, the body, the fixture. And on the other hand, we have the scale of the collective, essentially the domestic, the spatial, the room. The history of ceramics has always moved between these two scales, the body to the collective body, from Roman proto-toilet paper ceramic discs to early wall insulation and filtration systems. Ceramics uses a hygienic tectonic to form the connection between life and material. By reevaluating these Western fixtures, the thesis destabilizes systemic psychosexual parameters. So on the Miro board, I've developed some different 3D prototypes. I've been experimenting with toolpath sort of pre-visualization renderings. And there's also a photograph of some CNC molds. That's it. I guess one thing I wanted to mention with the drawings that are sort of 5 iterations, I was sort of thinking about specific digital effects and how those can relate to the physical marks of a CNC bit. And so there's sort of all these different qualities that happen just with the line work. And I think that's sort of what I'm thinking about developing.
Great, thanks everyone. Let's open it up to the rest of the group, and I'm happy to navigate or go back to anything if someone would like to have a replay. So maybe one thing we could do is we could just kind of swing back to Ju Cheng and Lindsay. And of course, I think everyone knows that this is a project that they have been working on for quite some time in terms of the idea about materiality and computational materiality. And I think it's pretty interesting that they're trying to, as Ju Cheng was describing, trying to kind of flip the set of operations, meaning instead of thinking about the kind of formal project first, to think about the material first and creating another kind of interface for that. They've shown one interface is which was developed in the studio with me last spring with Richard and I think that this is just on the board so that there's a kind of an understanding that they have a background and an interest in pursuing the Cinema 4D and the kinds of possibilities that Cinema 4D allows for in terms of just rethinking these workflows, but that honestly, they're taking the project in a whole new direction from last spring. So maybe you guys can just kind of hop in your own words, say a little bit about the idea of the house, the program, the project, just to fill people into the bit of the backstory. You're muted.
So basically for the house, we're taking the project of Frank Gehry's project, Arnoldi Triplex, which I believe is just next to Devon's place. And the reason why we choose that project is we don't have image here, but it's a triplex, which means it basically are 3 boxes. They have the same components, but arranged in a different way. And I think that's really relevant to how we want to develop this project, where we have all these components, but eventually it's gonna be composed, constantly creating new compositions out of the same one interface. And that's what we are actually designing right now. Essentially, is how the interface is gonna affect the design and where it stops. Oh yeah, that one.
Mm-hmm. There we go.
I just want to.
Great.
Hi. I think all 4 projects are really, really compelling at this stage. And I'm super excited about the idea of like exploring digital materiality. And I'm just wondering, I mean, I see it with Sadhvi's project with the animation of the crumpled paper, but maybe with this project that we're looking at here and Nero's project, I was wondering, like, how do you start to establish the physics of the material, and how does that come into play? If you assign, like, let's say you're working with brick, but it works digitally like brick, I'm wondering if there's a way to start to look into the kind of digital material and establish new physics for them that are based on the way the materials are simulated. And it may start to give you different ways of aggregating them or composing them, or create different kinds of tensions that are not sort of recognizable in their kind of familiar forms. I wonder if anyone could talk about that a little bit.
I think that's a great point, Jackie, and I hope they can talk about that. It seems like it's a really specific moment that we're in which that's a huge opportunity, is to design these materials and to think of them not only as texture maps or sort of like assets that are coming prepackaged with the software, but that you can start to really think about their composition digitally. And I mean that by not as like a remediated version of what we already know has been made as some kind of material extracted from the ground, but like literally it's a digital computational material.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting point, and I think it comes to also something Jonathan Warner brought up about how the role of simulation seems to drive all 4 projects in the chat. And what seems kind of exciting, and I guess, this also speaks to, I guess, all 4 of these, but is the notion that also being not able to make physical models directly may actually, but at the same time wanting to make a physical model and deal with physical things in a digital space, but inverting the procedure could produce some very interesting new insights that are paralleled with developments that are actually taking place in material science, which is really no longer about materials being extracted, but rather designed and engineered. So we now think about things in terms of material properties, or let's say material behaviors actually, rather than materials. So working in the inverted direction and starting to think about building physical, let's say digital models that have physical properties in some way, I think that Jackie's referring to, could really produce some really great insights and really take advantage of, in fact, this moment that we're in on a number of different levels.
Yeah, like Sam, your project, I mean, I would love to see what a digital ceramic material really is and what it does. Like ceramics is something that is hard and pliable in terms of how you can shape it. But it also has properties where, like, you would imagine it can crack if you like punched it. And so I wonder, like, how do you take on those kinds of expected actions, let's say, of the material?
Yeah, I think I mean, with ceramics, especially the sort of like thermal properties of it, like there is this sort of structural issue that's like fundamental to the material, and that doesn't really exist in the digital space, these sort of this sort of risk. But I mean, thinking about what the CNC and the sort of marks that that produces, for me, I made the connection kind of earlier on to like coil building in ceramics. And so there's always this idea of like making and this history of making. And now I'm looking for ways to kind of like subvert or like introduce some sort of other way of like manufacturing it.
I had a question for Sattvi, if I can jump in. I was just, yeah, could we go? Cool. Sattvi, I was just like really I was rewatching these videos and fascinated by the two sheets of crumpled paper, because it seems like you're doing the simulation of copying twice in some way, right? There's like crumpling two sheets of paper together is in fact like a simulation of copying, because it's actually only one thing you ever do, and then you pull them apart and it looks like you've copied a thing, but they're resultant from the exact same moment in time, and then you're simulating that digitally, right? And I'm just curious, maybe I missed it. I missed actually a little bit of what your presentation, but I'm wondering how, if at all, this sort of the aesthetic of the crumple and of the sort of imperfect copy plays out programmatically, or in the kind of ethic of the project in any way, or if it's you're mostly kind of interested in this as an aesthetic pursuit.
So it is an aesthetic and cultural a commentary on how two things that look almost exactly identical can say completely different things and take a stand on take a political stand or take a cultural stand. And in my case, the process of crumpling will translate in its mass of the building, but the two things, as I have it planned right now, the two buildings will say two different things about the situation between the Vatican and Rome, and the political and the border disputes that come with it.
Cool, thank you.
We could touch on Nero's project for a moment. Nero has I see a donate now button. I don't think he's asking money. I think he's, I don't know, Nero, maybe you could tell us a little bit what you're asking for here.
Yeah, like I think I fully wanted to embrace this project as a collaborative work where every single asset in this whole construct is authorized by any people, and also this accumulation and collaboration and collection ideas is really growing on me. So I'm really hoping for people. Well, there are a lot of people sending me message already. They're gonna try to donate some objects. I mean, digital objects, models, and shaders that they're interested in, and I will do it. I will accumulatively to construct this pile of mountain and see where this is bringing me.
What I think is really interesting about that is that you're actually taking advantage of our social distancing and our kind of remote formatting and starting to find a way to not only engage your classmates, but possibly even a broader audience. And that at this point, it seems like the thesis is maybe less about the single project or the single author and more about finding different formats and techniques that could be inclusive and bring a kind of multiplicity into the work. And I think this is something that I'm just remembering. I think it's John Cooper. He was with us a moment ago. That John was mentioning when he wrote the essay with Mira for Log, and just talking about new forms of authorship. Well, I wouldn't say they're new, but let's say other kinds of authorship and other kinds of models of collaboration. And I'm not sure if it's just the time in general or this particular like Miro and Zoom, but it does seem like it's a really great opportunity to start to look at other kinds of exchanges. I know Peter's doing that in his class this summer. And so I'm excited to see how Thesis may start to switch gears a little bit from a kind of singular voice to some other kind of notions of exchange over time. So please do keep us posted as to how this kind of experiment plays out. I think it'll be really cool to see. Yeah.
Of course. And it's an interesting shift from being a design. I think like everybody in SCI-Arc are mastered at design already, but it's an interesting position to take as a curator, how to take other people's object and you have to make it work. And that's a new mindset of being an architect, I guess.
I'm just dragging this kind of image that Elena asked for Sam. Elena, do you want to fill us in on this?
No, I was just giving him some resources for ceramic, heats, gas porcellanato. So we've been texting, but yeah, I think it's very specific and technical. So
okay,
very exciting.
Might not be of use to anybody else.
I dropped it in there, Sam, so you have it as a record. Great. Well, I do think that the kinds of larger questions are really interesting. I mean, all four is just coincident because it was alphabetical, but I think that all four of you are finding, as Jackie was mentioning, different ways of dealing with materiality, and I think that's something that I'm super happy to see that kind of coming back on the table and coming back in these fresh ways, and what it means to simulate these materials and how we can start to kind of think about the whole set of operations in our workflows in other ways. And it maybe it's a kind of perfect storm where you can think about materials differently and you have these collaborative formats. And so bringing all that together this summer is, I think, is going to result in some really super interesting work from all of you. Why don't you ask some questions, or maybe we could get some comments or thoughts. Jesse sent a link which everyone can see. Oh, yes. From the MoMA.
Yeah, I just felt it was like between like the Nero and the Sam kind of world that like Paul Antonelli was trying to talk about, like above ground mining and the kind of geology that those two, that Sam and Nero, your projects have, I think I thought the ore streams was interesting because it was all like recycling or aftermarket or donated Nero. So then you're like inverting it where you're like, oh no, actually all of that computational stuff does have materiality, and it can be recycled, and it does have weight, and it does have systems of labor and production and mobilization behind it.
Mm-hmm. So maybe we're going to probably run just a little bit over because we started late, but perhaps everyone could just give us a teaser of the miniatures plan and get some feedback on that, and then we'll wrap it up. So Sam, what are you thinking for miniatures? Is it a model?
Yeah, it's gonna be a physical model.
I guess they're
working on like developing some sort of chunk, I guess similar to Lindsay and Yicheng, but kind of like creating this fake technical system that maybe relates more to the research that I was doing, and it doesn't work, but it looks like it works.
So it's not going to be a functional toilet.
It won't be a functional toilet.
It won't be a functional toilet. Will it be in ceramic? Wendy's got hopes though. She's excited about that. Will it be in ceramic material for real, or will it be like a simulation or some kind of material that behaves like?
Midterm, I'm using alternative materials to ceramic just because of all of the facilities that requires. So kind of thinking about like substitutes for like a glaze or substitutes for like an actual ceramic.
Cool. Sadvi, how's it going? Do you have a plan already for miniatures, or are you still working in the simulation?
For miniature, I will have a physical model showing the two identical structures. But probably through my presentation, I would like to bring out how, although they are identical, they do different things in their program.
How do you think you'll show that? Will it be through treating the material or the models differently, or paint or color or finish or some kind, or more like their actual material makeup to begin with?
Well, it's more a programmatic difference their treasuries. So they're treasuries of the Vatican, but they both show treasures and declare it very differently to the world.
So I already know, but I'll ask anyway. So Ju Cheng and Lindsay, what is your plan for miniatures?
For miniature, we are not sure about the physical model parts, but for sure we will have a animation showing how our 3D foundry works to be a proof of concept.
Okay. So since we have Elena here, it's okay if they submit a video, right? I think this was a question a few weeks ago.
For the miniature?
Yes.
I think they have to have something for the show to put on the pedestal. I think Florencia calls it the toilet paper model. So I'm not sure how much toilet paper we'll see, but there has to be one physical model. And I think we will have the launch of the miniature sites, meaning we're gonna have the website starting. And so I think that will contain the digital content. So animations or pictures or renderings. So I think the expectations is to have both a physical model for the miniatures to be placed on the pedestal that Florencia will put that on the pedestal, and we'll have a photographer taking pictures, but clearly in the Zoom reviews and in the website that we are making, there is, it's a window towards digital products.
I just want to say, last year, I know that there were some students for miniatures who were didn't want to have like a traditional physical model, and there was at least one example where I saw like a little mini projector, and they had a little mini screen, and it was really cute. So I mean, there might be options like that if you don't want to like 3D print something or anything like that.
So we'll get some clarification about that, but perhaps a small physical model, very small, would be okay. Right, like a ring or something, like just an accessory model. Cool. And Nero, I know you also have something planned. You don't have to reveal the entire workflow of how that's going to happen, but maybe just a general description. You will have a model, correct?
I will have a model. I love models, if you know me enough. And I was thinking about to produce like literally 3D printed model, but literally Jackie's comments. It's really interesting and alarming. What does it mean to represent model that is also represent a fake digital models have like like weird different materials than we're actually interacting with daily is important as well. So I guess that's my teaser. It's gonna be a model, yes, and it's gonna have weird formats that will represent different material sets.
So it's a quiet day today. What about any questions from our presenters? Do you have any, not just about format or so forth, but do you have anything? We have really quite a wonderful opportunity here with all of our guests and your classmates. What are your thoughts? Any big concerns? Anything you think they could comment on?
I have a question for Nero.
Hi.
Hi. I find it really interesting how you're aggregating, to me, what seems like arbitrary objects. And I wonder if they all perform a different role, or will it be accumulated in program?
That's an interesting question. First of all, I won't call it an aggregated model. I will rather call it a construction model. I wanted to treat it as some sort of physical construction, and with as what John was mentioning in the group chat, simulation is going to play a huge portion of this model, and also I think there's I mean, for the matter of fact, I bring the geology mountain part towards my thesis. I rather to seek a final model without a stable form. It's more of a, you know, everything is comes and go in fluctuates, and maybe the model can fall apart with a blow of the wind. That's pretty much the direction I'm pursuing.
So you plan on making two models in tandem, if I understand. You have the digital setup that has constraints as if it were a physical model. And then you have a physical model that's produced, let's call it daily, or in some kind of regular build-up that's based off of the digital model, but not in a way to necessarily try to recreate it as the real. It's another kind of model then. Is that's how this is?
And that is correct, but I'm still trying to define like what is the attribute of this, you know, a quote unquote another model. Yeah, but that's correct. It's not going to be a physical model. We already know what it is.
It's not like you're just going to convert to an STL and output. It's going to be something else. Yes. Okay, cool. Well, I think all of these models are going to be pretty spectacular, given the materiality is actually playing a key role in all of the thesis projects. And I'm really excited to see how you're going to do that and how you'll kind of surprise everyone with something that maybe is, even if it's just due to self-imposed constraints or challenges with production, I think it's going to, maybe those constraints will actually be openings to other opportunities for ways of making things. So I'm really excited to see how all this turns out. I'm sure many of you have to go back and have reviews start again, so I don't want to take up too much time unless there's comments, thoughts. Anyone else? Wendy, do you have anything to add?
Hi.
Anyone? David, Dana. I'm down just flipping through the pages. I hadn't realized we have so many people chatting with. I just had the first page up. Please join us. Max, lots of possibilities for conversation here. Are you guys excited about what's happening? Is today just a challenging day? Is that what's going on? It's a little bit of a quiet day. Okay. So Florencia has joined us again. We're just making sure, Florencia, that everyone must have a physical model, even if their main production is some kind of simulation or video, right? They must turn in a physical model.
I'm muted. No, it's not a must. If students don't, they decide. I mean, remember, Devin, that in the past we had iPads?
I know, I remember. That's hard,
So,
right?
I mean, the issue is that if I have it's different because it was an exhibition. So like if I photograph an iPad, you know what I mean? It's Jesse's laughing. I mean, I can photograph an iPad with the confetti piñata background. That would be no problem. I think you can print an image and frame it on a frame. You know, I would say that too. I mean, you can say, this is my project. Faris was asking me the same thing on the chat, and I was saying, like, I think that you don't have to do a model if you don't want to, but you could do, like, you can print the frame of your animation, and you can put it on a frame, you know, in an acrylic frame or something like that. And so it might be one frame, it's a 1-to-1 frame. So it's not a model. So I think anything goes. And no bringing the model also, it's an option. This is we're giving to the students. Some students, even in miniatures, did not feel that they were ready. Mostly Coy Howard students did not feel they were ready for miniatures models, so they would not submit, and they didn't submit models in miniatures in the last 5 years. So I think it's up to the students. But I would recommend, if you would like, I mean, so we can photograph it. I think an image of an image could be interesting.
Well, I think
Florencia.
Advantage of that, yeah.
Who's that?
From Sam.
Sam. Yeah.
If we're using materials that might expire after a few days, is there sort of a how long will the miniatures be up?
You know, you bring it July 1st. Then July 2nd is a Thursday. July 3rd is a holiday. Then it's Saturday, Sunday. Then the Monday, which is the drone and all that, and the Tuesday, so almost a week. If your model can handle a week, you can also say, you know, at the end of this, you can trash it. Like I had, like somebody, Sherry, I recommended her to send flowers from China, to order flowers online, and we'll just get rid of them. And so for anybody that is FedExing something or Amazon something, like you send it on Amazon, we just will receive it and we'll put it. So I think that you could do that. I'm not sure what is that is going to expire so fast. A cake, you know, let's say that is a cake. They'll photograph right away. So the photographs are ready, and then the rest. So it's a long weekend in the middle. So I would say yes, as long as I don't get infected or something like that.
You can document its degradation.
A toilet. I saw that you now.
It's entropy.
Exactly. A toilet. Try that is a new one, not a used one, but yeah, sure.
I formulated a question. If anyone wants to answer a question. Sorry, it's just a room full of a bunch of really impressive people. It's hard to get the confidence to ask everyone a question here. I really appreciate that all these projects they have like a relationship with dubious physics, which like modern architecture seems to have like a great relationship with at like varying scales. and still it doesn't, and often like these, you know, a lot of these projects seem to be about the sort of really nicely isolating like a singular move or a singular sort of, I don't know, like a sort of operation on this type of material, whether it's a digital material or a physical object or whatever. There seems to be like a really like sophisticated sort of understanding and isolation of that one move, but it doesn't seem gimmicky for any of them, which is really great. And I see all of these projects as sort of like existing in this sort of like raw state where like the operation or like the movement that's being made is really speaks to the sort of like style or the like expression of the movement itself too, right? Which is like really effective. And I wonder how all of, and maybe both advisors and students could speak to this or something, but like there's sort of something, there's something like epic about the raw like quality that all of these projects have. You know, there's like just the essential sort of movement is creating this like really profound sort of question, I guess, right? And I wonder like how much through midterm and through to the final, whether like you think that sort of raw quality is something that's going to stay in all of these projects, or if it's something that's going to be more finished or polished. I mean, Lindsay and Ju Chang, for example, is like obviously really almost like candy. They're like so beautifully finished pieces. Not that any of them are less beautiful than the others, but like, you know, do you intend to keep that rawness present throughout the projects, and if so, how?
Max, could you maybe define what would be understood as raw, for example? Is it a material rawness, or is it the argument, or what are you reading as raw exactly?
I think I'm sort of speaking to like the formal quality of some of the rough edges that some of these have. So in some cases, it can be a line that's unfinished, or it can be, you know, the edge of a mesh, you know, like a rendering mesh or something like that. That's sort of left to, yeah, I don't know, like a rough edge or something like that. It's not perfect or closed or whatever. I don't know. That's sort of what I mean. It's sort of like the formal quality that a lot of these things have seem to be, you know, very essential and very like unfinished, or everything hasn't been like tied up or whatever, you know.
I guess I can speak for what I'm working on. So for many months now, I've been studying the qualities of paper and the qualities of a fold, whether it's physically crushing them instead, and I'm trying to simulate digitally doing physically. And so the process of arriving at the form is quite important in my project, and I do wish to maintain the rawness of the folds of the paper and how they come together, and translate that into like a functional building.
I think that's a really insightful comment, Max. I too sense that something that's present in these projects, and probably beyond these, but in part I think that has to do with an interest in the constructed nature of images. That if we're looking at materiality, that's also potentially extends to, you know, the construction of an image itself. But also, I think the back of house aspect of being on Zoom is pushing that in different areas of the culture, actually. Like I've been noticing, for instance, in fashion, the next collections that are coming out in September, like John Galliano's been talking a lot about how he's working on Zoom. So you know, we're all in this kind of space, and back of house and front of house are changing places, and this allows one to reveal the constructed nature of things. So I think that's a really insightful comment, and one that we should be looking out for and finding ways to engage and maybe emphasize, accentuate, or intensify, right, this constructed back of house. Yeah, I think that's really interesting.
I just want to make a quick comments on my project, and I enjoy the comments a lot. First of all, the back of house is very important for my project as well. And I do think it's very crucial when you receive a digital resource and you still maintain the trace of where it came from after you manipulate with it. And to almost like glorify this idea of collection is important about my project. So polish, probably not. Is it going to be good looking? Hopefully, yes.
Totally. I mean, I think part of it is also like, you know, we're partway through, and so I don't mean to like point at anything and be like, oh, you didn't finish your work for today. You know, it's not hardly that. It's more like, you know, is that something that you seek to like keep around? Is that something that's like essential to your project? I mean, Nero, yours is a fine example because you have these like physical bodies that are like, you know, intersecting or meeting in like complicated ways that you're like curating yourself. And so that lends like a, you know, this like sort of what I'm terming raw sort of quality of it, because it's just like these, you know, these objects that you're formulating, manipulating, whatever, collecting, and then assembling in a way that feels precarious, you know? Yeah, and so, yeah, I don't need to say more.
No, I thought it was a really, I mean, it's an interesting comment because these 4 projects are about the sort of materiality. And when you think about the edge and like the qualities of that, that's such a physical sort of characteristic and something that you might not normally think of, because at least with digital objects, we normally see them as this sort of seamless, like solid, when in reality it's infinitely thin and there's no material. So that's something that I've been thinking about.
I think in 5 minutes, we're gonna break everyone to the main room. Just a heads up.
Yeah, Zaina, that's like totally right in the question that I wanted to ask about, like Savi, you said you wanted to like preserve the folds in, or kind of like from the simulation, maybe not like to like make it about simulation. I thought that was really interesting that the fold, in order to be a fold, would somehow have to be like domesticated or controlled or sort of cognized, where like here kind of from the simulation you would get a fold that is somehow like separate from the kind of theoretical history of the fold. And so that was my main question, was like to the sort of group in general, if there, it seems like there is a kind of like the fold in architecture as a project seems to be over, or seems to have been gotten to what it needed to be, and then we moved on. I'm curious if this project could make more space for the theory of the fold, separate from the way that it has been in architecture previously. I think that's really interesting as a potential additional space. And I think like a lot of David's brown paper projects also ask that question about like the fold that is a new and different and potentially revelatory fold than we know it in architecture.
I think in my project, it is not about the fold itself, but I'm using the fold. I'm using the process of folding 2 things at the same time to produce identical objects. And so I started my process in the physical world. And so it's not about investigating the fold itself, but it's about how I'm trying to create identicality by measuring the similarity in the folds.
I think that the kind of, Sadvi, I think that the kind of doubling is super interesting. And I mean, there's even just the most kind of subtle doubling that happens with a physical, any kind of model material, paper or otherwise, because there's a physical offset. And I'm wondering if you are taking some of that into account digitally in terms of even just like thinking a little bit about Jucheng and Lindsay, just like how do you deal with thickness or even a kind of implied thickness in the simulation? Is that something that's important because in the end, if we even just said like the second sheet of paper that's getting crumpled in the simulation is slightly, ever so slightly smaller and offset, like that nuance difference in itself is already, could have like an enormous kind of, let's say, difference once actually presented back into a full scale building. You know, like the tolerance of that in the simulation could actually be quite huge. I'm just thinking of a lot of Frank Gehry examples that use paper, you know, historically, obviously used all kinds of paper and crumpling and ways of kind of simulating the enclosures and panel systems and so forth. And tolerance becomes like a really, really interesting discussion along those lines.
Right. That's actually something that I have been working on and thinking about for a while. And there is an ever so slight difference between the two crumples. If like studied closely, and that is what my project is trying to say, that they're identical but not really. And there is because of the tolerance in say a simulation world or in the physical paper world, there is also a difference between what the two buildings are trying to say or what they stand for.
Mm-hmm. I mean, what I like about that is that it's also a conceptual problem, that it doesn't rely on crumpled paper for you to run your thesis experiment. That's the paper is a foil. I don't mean it's actually foil. I mean, it's a conceptual foil for you to be able to think about very, very nuanced differences between two things. And I think that's going to be very cool to see how that all plays out. I'm excited that we have 4 different, slightly kind of particular takes on materiality, some that are more creating like a direct relationship with materials that we're familiar with, and then how we can reuse them, and some that are suggesting we're going to create a whole new palette of materials. So I think we have a really great spectrum, and the conversation today was lovely. So I'm getting the word from Ferris that we are going to be heading back, or he's.
Yes, we're going to go back. Thank you, everybody. Sorry that I left my mic on. I don't know what's. I mean, between the typing and my co-workers here that are very loud. My kids, I mean, by that. They don't work that much, so anyway. So, yes, so he's going to send us back to the other room. Thank you, guys. It was fun to go back and forth to the rooms, I have to say. Yeah.
Great.
Okay, go to main room.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Faris, is the other group coming in, or are we all here now?
Yeah, they should be coming in.
Oh, they're coming in, okay. You're in charge, so you decide.
Yeah, it'll automatically collapse everyone in 20 seconds.
Oh, so it just it stops, somebody's talking, it just like cancels and brings them here. Okay. I just wanted to, because I got on the chat and then you asked some questions about miniatures, so I just wanted to leave it for questions. Just leave it a little bit for some questions before we close. Such as some question that he wants to send something that can get bad in like what, 5 days, that kind of questions. That can start smelling. I mean, that's what you're saying.
I was just wondering if our model has an expiration date.
Shell life.
Photograph.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I think that could be, as long as there's no issues of what you call health issues. Okay, I see. Yes, when this shelf life model. Yes, I will go for canned products that can have like what, 10 years shelf life, or with the Twinkie. What is that sweet that it never expires? So you could make like a cake that never expires because it's actually toxic in how artificial. I'm just talking. Are they coming in, Paris, or they are?
Yeah, they're all here.
Oh, we're all here. Okay, sorry. I thought that it was making just. Okay, so thank you, everybody. I didn't talk today. I was just like moving from room to room, and it was great. I mean, seeing what happens in the, and they were quite, even though this is alphabetical, we switch sometimes some names just to match the faculty so they can be on one side. Otherwise, it's just like a split. So I just wanted to take a few minutes only if you have any questions. Shri, she has a question. David Kenneth, McDonald's fries, yes. To have questions about miniatures. So let me go through Shri, she has a question. So for miniatures, we're woven 1 square foot physical model and drawings and or animations for the Zoom review. Zoom review, you do whatever you like. So there's like, you know, you talk with your advisor, you present, you will have your model back. So you can present as PowerPoint, you can present as a small video. Miniatures is a free, you know, format. We'll ask 3-minute presentation, but it will be, it's an open format. Faris sent me a question earlier, and he was saying like, what happens if you have, like if some students might not have a model, you don't have to submit, it's not required. You might just not submit because you want an animation. In the room B, they asked me also, if you have an animation, let's say a Saleh, I don't know if you're doing a model, if you're not doing a model, you're not here, also you might be doing something, but if you just have an animation, what can happen is that, hold on one second. Okay, sorry. But if you want, you could print a frame and send me a drawing on a frame and we photograph. I was saying earlier that we're photographing in previous years, and Damian knows, we used to have iPads and then run the animations on the iPad, but it's hard to photograph an iPad even if you give me your iPad. Like how do I do, how I would, I mean, it would be a photograph of, it's like mostly what you're gaining is that you're gaining a photograph. Okay, so Wendy, what if a model needs to be connected to an electrical outlet? I mean, yeah, I can arrange that, yeah. If it's few, I don't have like 100 outlets, I could do that. Can anyone who is partner, oh yes, so Faris is saying email, we're putting together the miniatures review schedule. Yes, yeah, so that's for the schedule, we're arranging the schedule, but for the models, if you have an outlet, we'll do a sign-up list. If you have special requirements that don't require a lot of people, but we can do it. I believe, Wendy, that yes, if you have a plugin, we can do it unless something like it's difficult, or I'll just send you an email. But yes. Any other questions? So again, if you don't want to do a model because you don't want to do a model, you have an animation, you have your review. So your review, you present however you like. You know, this is the idea. This is like an exhibition, and then you get the professional photographs. But for the rest, it's up to you. So we'll do a sign up for drop off, and that's how we know that who's submitting models. You can FedEx models. Ramon already knows that he might be receiving models. We'll send in an email that is to the attention of Ramon. You can, so if you can send flowers, or you can send a cake. I mean, yes, I mean, some stuff you can do. It's up to you. But again, these are like homemade models. Yeah. Okay, thank you, everybody. Please don't miss the Fridays at 5 today, and I'll see you later.
Thank you, Florencia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Florencia.